Hi, welcome to IBM Cloud Certification Series, and this is section 3.4. This section should help you go through the certification exam easily. The objectives of this section are to know what do you mean by load testing, what are the benefits and the tools available in Bookmarks for load testing, and the load test preparations and setup, and how you can analyze the results from the load test. What is load test? Load testing is the simplest form of performance testing that can help determine the capability of handling certain amount of users for a cloud application. The goal of this testing is to see how the system would perform when subjected to the load and the application behavior. The first one is called the stress testing. And the key benefits of this load testing are mainly there is no setup if you are implementing it in cloud, and there is maintenance is not required, and it's easy and fast to deploy, and all the scalability concept and the other things can be managed in the cloud by using this auto scaling service. And the ease of management is one of the key features. Tests on these tests can be performed from different locations. If your app is deployed in a different geographical region, you can test the app from different regions too. And it's very low cost when compared to the traditional model. What are the tools available in Bookmarks for this load testing? Basically, IBM Bookmarks offers BlazeMeter and Load Impact. So Load Impact tools for doing this load testing. The BlazeMeter service provides the developers with an enterprise-grade grade out-of-the-box load testing solution that's compatible with Apache JMeter. Similarly, Load Impact service is leading load testing tool with unlimited demand for multiple geographic testing capabilities. Load Impact service provides two tools for you to create a user scenario via Google Chrome extensions or a proxy recorder. As we talked about load testing, we will see how do we need to prepare for the load testing. So first we need to determine what are the compliances that are needed by the application, mainly the SLAs, regulations, and the test setups. All these need to be considered prior to performing any of these test operations. The second piece is to collect the data that is needed for the test so that you can simulate for each use of the data that has been available, and also collecting the data when the application is going to receive the peak traffic, and also identify what are the break-even points ensured, and also determine the bandwidth for a specific potential spikes in traffic at a given time. Another key aspect to identify in these tests are basically make sure that you have a baseline that has been that you're looking for when you're doing these tests. Once you look at the baseline and have a benchmark set, try to increase the load using this load test tools that are available, and also make sure that you are tuning your performance of the app. Basically, you can either use the auto scaling service or some application parameters based on the load that you're going to send through the Load Impact tool from Bookmarks to this application. The next is the load test execution and analysis. What are the key things that you need to look at? Make sure you have a good application scenario where your organization is using to take it as a sample tent to create a user scenario based on that, rather than coming with the simple test scenario there. So create a test configuration after creating a scenario that will describe what load test you want to run, and also specify the parameters or define a load, basically, which means that there are different types of loads that can be defined, mainly the virtual user loads if you want to do a single user testing or a multiple user testing based on the user loads that you want to send to an application, and allocate the zones for each user scenario, mainly the geographical zones where you want to load the messages from for this application. Either you want to load it from across country or cross region, wherever you want to make sure those loads are simulated from there, so that you will know the bandwidth issues and you can identify the issues your application is having when a request is sent from different parts of the world. Also make sure that you do multiple iterations in order to gain continuous feedback on the performance of your system. That's why it is advisable to schedule regular ongoing tests rather than just doing one benchmark and having it having it there for the lifetime of the application. You can also select the test you would like to schedule and then select the date and time you want to configure the test for, either monthly, daily, or weekly, based on your configuration. As we talked about load test preparations, let's go ahead and talk about how we can do the load test execution using the load impact service. So first thing is in this load test execution is to first create a scenario, a good scenario that's based on a credible story of a user performing a complex task. The next thing is to create a test configuration that describes what load test you want to run. So the diagram on the right-hand side top corner talks about creating a scenario, and you can add a test to that scenario. So later, after you add a test based on your application that you want to test, make sure that you try to define a load for that scenario and test. So define the virtual load for a user scenario. If you're looking at the diagram on the bottom left-hand side of the application, it tells you how a traffic simulation can be accomplished. But normally what people do is just for simple settings, they enter a virtual user load level, basically the number of users you want to simulate, the test duration, and specify a percentage of simulated users that will be allocated for each scenario. Well, if you want an advanced settings scenario, enter an amount of virtual users and ramp up the test duration in minutes, select the IPs that you need them, and specify a test you want to simulate for different networks and clients. Also allocate different zones and user scenarios by choosing a geographic region as shown in the diagram on the left-hand side at the bottom. You can run a load test scenario from a different zone or application that is residing. Coming on to the right-hand side of the same slide, which describes the scheduling. In order to gain continuous feedback on the performance of your system, it is basically advisable to schedule a regular ongoing test. In this case, you can select the test you want to schedule based on the date and time, and the time zone where you want to execute the test, and the frequency, which is daily or monthly. That will help the user execute these tests on different schedules. Now let's go to the next slide. Once you execute these tests, how are you going to interpret the results? So then this slide gives you a graphical depiction of how you can analyze and interpret the results in the load impact. This can be very tricky, but there are some general rules you can follow that can help you determine how the test went. So on this screen, on the diagram, if you're looking at it, the green graph shows the number of virtual users actively increasing, and the blue graph shows the virtual user load time increasing exponentially. So the virtual user active graph and the virtual user load time graph are default graphs displayed graphs that are displayed on the results page. The virtual user time graph will give you a quick indication of how the target site handled the load test during the request. The virtual user active graph shows the number of active simulated clients or simulated virtual users at any point during the test, what we also sometimes call a load level in this case. So most of the times the optimum page load time is less than 1 minute. Ideally, it should be between 3 to 8 seconds. Regardless of the type of graph you get, look out for the failed results request count, failed requests that indicate you are not getting any useful content back from the server, visible in the URL list with the response code of 404. So make sure that you look for these things. Going on to the next slide, which we are going to talk about the same execution of this user test case scenario in the demo for this cloud certification series. Thank you. And there is also the list of bookmarks that are being that have been published here. You can have a look at it so that you can dig more deeper into how load tests can be performed. Thank you.